That's my horse." The words cut through the morning air like a blade through silk. Samuel Reed's hand froze on the corral gate, his coffee cup halfway to his lips. The woman stood 30 feet away, her shadow long in the early light, pointing at the chestnut mare he'd been breaking for 3 weeks. "Ma'am?" His voice came out rougher than intended. She stepped closer, and he could see the dust on her traveling dress, the weariness in her shoulders, the determined set of her jaw. Young, maybe 25, with dark hair escaping from beneath a worn hat. But it was her eyes that stopped him cold, green as prairie grass, and familiar in a way that made his chest tighten. "That chestnut mare. She's mine." Samuel set his coffee on the fence post with deliberate care. The mare in question nickered softly, her ears pricked toward the stranger. "Miss, I bought that horse fair and square from Jake Morrison 2 months back. Got the papers to prove it." "Jake Morrison." She spat the name like poison. "Jake Morrison stole her from me." The morning birds fell silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Samuel walked slowly toward the corral, his boots crunching on the dry earth. The mare came to him willingly, pressing her nose against his palm. He'd grown fond of her. She had spirit but good sense, the kind of horse a man could trust with his life. As she turned, the morning sun caught her left flank, and Samuel's world tilted. There, burned deep into her hide, was a brand he knew better than his own name. A lazy R connected to a curved cess, his father's mark. The Reed Sun brand that had died with the old man 15 years ago. His mouth went dry. "Where did you get this horse?" The woman's chin lifted. "She was my father's, and his father's before that." Samuel's hand trembled against the mare's neck. The brand was perfect, unmistakable, but that was impossible. His father had sworn he'd burned that iron himself when Samuel was barely 16, right after. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. "Mary." She paused, her eyes never leaving his face. "Mary Castellanos." The name hit him like a physical blow. Castellanos, the family his father had sworn never existed, the secret Samuel had carried for 20 years. The woman who'd left town one night and taken a piece of his father's soul with her. The mare whinnied softly, as if she remembered something too. Section 2, Moral Decisions. Samuel's mind raced through the implications like wildfire through dry grass. If this woman was telling the truth, if she really was Elena Castellanos' daughter, then everything his father had told him about the past was a lie. "You need to come inside," he said finally. Mary shook her head. "I just want my horse back." "It's not that simple." Samuel opened the corral gate, his movements careful and measured. "That brand, it belonged to my father, Thomas Reed." Something shifted in Mary's expression, surprise, then recognition, then something harder to read. "Thomas Reed is dead. 15 years now." "Good." The word fell between them like a stone in still water. Samuel's jaw tightened. "Lady, I don't know what grievance you think you have with my family, but your family." Mary's laugh was bitter as alkali water. "Your family destroyed mine." The mare stepped between them as if sensing the tension, her brown eyes intelligent and watchful. Samuel found himself studying the animal with new eyes. She was older than he'd thought, maybe 15 years, the same age as his father's death, the same age as the night Elena Castellanos had disappeared. "My father loved that horse," Mary continued, her voice softer now, but no less intense. "Called her Luna, said she was the finest piece of horseflesh he'd ever seen, worth more than gold. When the fever took him last winter, she was all I had left." Samuel's throat constricted. Luna. He remembered now, his father drunk and weeping one night, talking about a moon-colored mare and the woman who'd taken her away. The woman Thomas Reed had loved and lost. "If Jake Morrison stole her from you," Samuel said carefully, "why didn't you go to the law?" Mary's smile was sharp as broken glass. "The law? Sheriff Morrison is Jake's brother. Half the town council owes Jake money. What law would help a Mexican woman against a Morrison?" The truth of it settled in Samuel's stomach like lead. He'd known Jake was crooked, but he'd needed a horse, and the price had been right. Now he understood why. "Look," he said, pulling his hat off and running a hand through his hair. "I paid good money for this mare. I've got bills to pay, a ranch to run, and I've got nothing left but her." Mary's voice cracked, just barely. She's the last piece of my father I have. Samuel looked at the horse, at Luna, and saw his father's ghost in every line of her body. Saw Elena Castellanos in Mary's stubborn chin, her proud shoulders. Saw 20 years of secrets and lies, stretching back to a night when everything had changed. In the distance, dust rose on the horizon. Riders coming fast. We've got company, Samuel said, his hand moving instinctively to his gun. Mary followed his gaze, her face paling. Jake Morrison, looks like. Samuel made a decision that would change everything. Get in the house, now. What about Luna? The horse stays with me. For now. The riders were closer now. 5 men, maybe 6. Too many for a social call. Why are you helping me? Mary asked. Samuel looked at her one more time, seeing Elena's eyes in a younger face. Because my father owed your family a debt, and Reed men always pay their debts. Section 3. Danger arrives. The riders came like a thunderstorm, their horses' hooves drumming against the hard-packed earth. Samuel counted 6 men as they approached, Jake Morrison in the lead on his black stallion, his silver spurs catching the morning light. Behind him rode his brother Sheriff Morrison, the deputy, and 3 others Samuel recognized as Jake's hired guns. Mary had retreated to the house, but Samuel could see her shadow in the window watching. Luna had grown restless in the corral, pacing and snorting as if she sensed trouble on the wind. Jake Morrison drew rein 20 feet from the porch, his pale eyes scanning the property like a predator marking territory. He was a big man, thick through the chest and shoulders, with hands that looked more comfortable holding a gun than reins. Morning, Reed. Jake's voice carried the lazy confidence of a man who'd never been told no. Heard you might have something that doesn't belong to you. Samuel kept his hands visible, relaxed at his sides. Don't know what you mean, Jake. That mare. Jake nodded toward the corral. Girl came through town yesterday, spinning tales about stolen horses. Sheriff here thought we should ride out. Make sure everything's on the up and up. Sheriff Morrison looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Samuel had known Tom Morrison for years. He was weak, easily led, but not entirely corrupt. Not like his brother. Horse is mine, Samuel said evenly. Got the bill of sale you gave me. Jake's smile was thin as a blade. See, that's the funny thing about papers, Reed. Sometimes they go missing. Sometimes they turn out to be forgeries. Sometimes a man realizes he made a mistake selling property that wasn't rightly his to sell. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Samuel felt the familiar weight of his Colt against his hip, but 6-to-1 odds weren't the kind a smart man played. You know, Jake continued, dismounting with deliberate slowness, I had a long talk with that Mexican girl yesterday. Pretty little thing. Shame about her circumstances. No family, no money, no protection. Easy for a woman like that to get ideas above her station. Samuel's jaw clenched. What kind of ideas? The kind where she thinks she can waltz into town and accuse respectable businessmen of theft. Jake stepped closer, his hand resting on his gun butt. The kind where she forgets her place. Behind Jake his men spread out in a practiced formation. These weren't cowboys, they were killers, and they knew their business. Course, Jake said, his voice dropping to a conversational tone. Mistakes can be forgiven. Horse gets returned to its rightful owner. Girl rides out of town, everybody's happy. Simple as that. Samuel looked past Jake toward the corral, where Luna stood alert and watching. In the sunlight his father's brand seemed to burn against her flank like a wound that wouldn't heal. And if I say no, Jake's smile widened, well then we'd have to talk about that fire last month at the Hendricks place. Terrible thing, house burning down like that. Lucky thing old man Hendricks got out alive. Might not be so lucky next time. The meaning was clear. Samuel felt something cold settle in his chest. Not fear, but a kind of deadly calm he recognized from the war. The feeling that came when talking was over, and only action remained. I need some time to think about it, Samuel said. Time's a luxury, Reed. You got till sundown. Jake swung back into his saddle with practiced ease. After that we come back for what's ours. With or without your cooperation. The riders wheeled their horses and galloped away, leaving a cloud of dust and the scent of threat hanging in the air. Samuel stood on his porch for a long moment, watching them disappear into the distance. When he finally turned toward the house, Mary was standing in the doorway, her face pale but determined. "They'll kill you," she said quietly. "Maybe." Samuel looked back at Luna, still pacing in her corral. "Maybe not." "Why? She's just a horse." Samuel met her eyes. "No, she's not. She's the last piece of truth in a world full of lies, and some things are worth dying for." Section 4. Human Connection. As the sun climbed higher, Samuel and Mary sat on opposite ends of his kitchen table, the weight of 20 years settling between them like dust. Samuel had brewed fresh coffee, and Mary had accepted a cup with hands that trembled only slightly. "Tell me about your mother," Samuel said finally. Mary's fingers tightened around the warm ceramic. "What do you want to know? What happened the night she left?" Mary was quiet for so long Samuel thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "She was dying." The words fell like stones into still water. The sickness had been eating at her for months, but she hid it. Papa knew, but he couldn't accept it. "That night she told me we had to go. Said there were people here who would use her death to hurt the ones she loved." Samuel's chest tightened. "My father." She loved him. Mary's eyes found his across the table, and for a moment she looked younger, more vulnerable. "I was only 5, but I remember how she'd light up when she talked about him, how she'd touch her belly when she thought I wasn't looking." The implication hit Samuel like a physical blow. "She was pregnant." Mary nodded. "Your brother, he lived 3 days." Samuel closed his eyes, feeling the world shift beneath him. A brother he'd never known, never had the chance to know. A love story that had ended in tragedy and silence. "She made me promise never to come back," Mary continued. "Said this place would only bring sorrow. But when Papa died and Jake Morrison showed up at our door claiming Luna," she shrugged. "Some promises can't be kept." Samuel stood and walked to the window, looking out at the corral where Luna grazed peacefully. "My father never told me any of this. He drank himself to death carrying secrets. Maybe that was his choice to make. Maybe." Samuel turned back to her. "But it shouldn't have been yours to bear." Mary studied his face with those familiar green eyes. "You look like him, you know. Your father. Same jaw, same way of standing like you're ready to face down the world. Did you know? When you saw me this morning, I suspected." Mary stood and joined him at the window. "Alina Castellanos was my mother's name. She took it back after she left here, but I was born Mary Reed." The truth settled between them like a bridge across a canyon. Sister, half-sister, family he'd never known he had. "That makes Luna your horse too." Mary smiled for the first time since arriving, and Samuel saw his father's ghost in the curve of her mouth. "Papa always said she belonged to the Reed family." Guess he was right. Samuel reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a small silver locket, tarnished with age, dented from years of handling. "This was my father's. He never told me where it came from, but he looked at it every night before bed." Mary took the locket with trembling fingers and opened it. Inside was a miniature painting of a woman with dark hair and green eyes, holding a baby. "That's her," Mary whispered. "That's Mama. And that's—" she looked up at Samuel with tears in her eyes. "That's the brother you never met." Samuel felt something break open in his chest. 20 years of questions finally answered. 20 years of loneliness finally understood. "She loved him until the end," Mary said softly. "Even when she married Papa, even when she was dying, she never stopped loving Thomas Reed." Outside, Luna nickered softly, as if she knew they were talking about her. The sun was past its zenith now, shadows growing long across the yard. "Jake Morrison will be back," Samuel said. Mary nodded. "What do we do?" Samuel looked at his sister, and felt something he hadn't experienced since his father's death. He wasn't alone anymore. "We face him together," he said, "like family should." Section 5. Full resolution plus epilogue. The sun hung low on the horizon when Jake Morrison and his men returned, their silhouettes dark against the dying light. But this time they found Samuel and Mary waiting together on the porch, Luna saddled and ready beside them. Jake's confident smile faltered when he saw Mary standing next to Samuel, her chin raised in defiance. "Thought I told you to send the girl packing," Jake called out. Change of plans, Samuel replied. His hand rested easy on his gun, but Mary could see the tension in his shoulders, the careful way he watched the hired gun spread out behind Jake. Sheriff Morrison cleared his throat nervously. Now Jake, maybe we should shut up. Tom. Jake's eyes never left Samuel's face. You're making a mistake, Reed. That girl's got you twisted around her little finger with her sob stories, but I know the truth. She's nothing but a greaser's brat with ideas above her station. Mary stepped forward, her voice carrying clear across the yard. My name is Mary Reed. Thomas Reed was my father, same as he was Samuel's. That makes Luna my inheritance, not your theft. The words hit Jake like a slap. For the first time uncertainty flickered across his features. That's impossible, he said, but his voice lacked its earlier conviction. Samuel pulled the silver locket from his pocket, holding it up so the dying light caught its surface. This belonged to Alina Castellanos. My father kept it until the day he died, along with the truth about why she left. Sheriff Morrison leaned forward in his saddle, squinting at the locket. Alina Castellanos, but she was pregnant with Thomas Reed's child, Mary finished. A child that lived just long enough to break both their hearts. The silence stretched taut as a bowstring. Samuel could see doubt creeping into the faces of Jake's men, could see Sheriff Morrison's internal struggle between law and loyalty. Touching story, Jake said finally, but his swagger was forced now. Doesn't change the fact that I bought that horse fair and square. From who? Mary challenged. My father died with nothing but debts. Luna was all I had left, and you stole her while I was burying him. Jake's hand moved toward his gun, but Samuel was ready. The Colt appeared in his grip with practiced ease, the barrel steady as bedrock. I wouldn't, Samuel said quietly. The standoff stretched long seconds, tension crackling like electricity before a storm. Then Sheriff Morrison spoke up, his voice stronger than it had been all day. Jake, put your hands where I can see them. What? Jake spun toward his brother, confusion and rage warring on his face. I said hands up. Sheriff Morrison had his own gun drawn now, pointed at Jake. You're under arrest for horse theft, fraud and conspiracy. The hired guns looked between the brothers, uncertain. Jake's face went purple with fury. You can't be serious, Tom. She's nothing but a she's Thomas Reed's daughter, Sheriff Morrison said firmly, and I remember Alina Castellanos, remember the night she left town and the stories that followed. Should have listened to them years ago. The fight went out of Jake all at once, his shoulders sagging as the weight of his crimes finally caught up with him. His men, seeing which way the wind was blowing, slowly raised their hands. An hour later, as Jake Morrison and his gang rode away in custody, Samuel and Mary stood beside Luna in the gathering dusk. The mare nuzzled Mary's shoulder, content at last. What will you do now? Samuel asked. Mary looked around the ranch, at the house that had sheltered her half-brother, the corrals that had held her father's gift, the land that connected them all. I don't know. I never thought past getting Luna back. You could stay, Samuel said quietly. Ranch is big enough for two, and Luna knows her way around here better than most people. Mary smiled, and in the fading light, Samuel saw both his father and Alina Castellanos in her face. I'd like that. Years later, when visitors came to the Reed Ranch, they would see a weathered brand beside the gate, two letters intertwined in a design that spoke of legacy and loss, of secrets kept and truths finally told. They would see a brother and sister working side by side, their laughter carrying across the prairie wind, and in the far pasture, they would see an old chestnut mare grazing peacefully in the evening light, bearing the brand that had brought a family together, and carrying the memory of a love that had transcended death itself. Luna had finally come home.